It's the KQ Morning Show. 92 KQRS.
I'm Steve Gorman. This is the KQ Morning Show. It's Thursday, November the 16th. I'm very happy to be here. And by here, I mean, at KQRS this morning, but here in the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
I'm closing in on a year in this bad boy.
Oh. All right.
I mean, isn't that weird?
Happy anniversary, almost.
Remember when we didn't know anything about each other and we were all looking at each other like dogs at the park? Like, who are you? And we were sniffing each other's butts and trying to figure out who, that whole thing.
Tony was humping your leg.
It was really weird.
Yeah, I miss those days.
But honestly, I felt comforted by that. I was like, well, this is a good start anyway. I mean, we'll have to work on boundaries later, but it's a better way to start than any. I tell you something, I appreciate being here on a regular basis. And yesterday I had a great another reminder of how great it is to live in the Twin Cities. But it's not so much a Twin Cities thing. It's this. Okay, we moved up here. I got here in January. My wife and the animals, the pets, they came up in February. We got a great place. We love our neighborhood. We love our spot. It's a rental. And so you know what that means for me? When I need something, I just send an email and some dude shows up and fixes it.
Oh, you lucky bastard.
It's incredible. I still have like at least once a month there's been something, and it could be minor. And the other day, or I should say yesterday, get home, gonna make a little lunch, and the little light over the range, over the stove, it's out. And you know what I did? I just made a quick call, and a dude showed up and replaced that little light bulb, which would have taken me 31 minutes to do because it's tiny and it's got that weird double-pronged appliance light that you don't have on hand. I would have had to go to the store, buy it, take down the vent hood, open up a hole. He walked in and knocked it out in 46 seconds, and I literally was like, I'm never buying a place again.
You'd have to go there with a little bulb and match it up.
That's what I mean.
I'm surprised you didn't. Usually guys are like that. They want to try to fix and handle everything.
Yeah. Young guys your age. By the time you're my age, you realize doing things 70 to 80% right is really it's better to just pay someone to do it 100% right.
A man's got to know his limitations.
Took me a while to figure it out.
On YouTube help, the DIY videos. They do help, but yeah, you're right. It's I do like renting. They say you're throwing money out the window.
No,
but, I mean, you're paying for convenience and letting someone else do it if you have a good landlord. I've had landlords before that foot of water in the basement. Never came over, never showed up.
Oh, boy, really?
A tree fell down in the driveway. Couldn't pull into the driveway. That tree sat there for 6 months.
Yeah, that's tough because, and I look at the younger generations, Candace, and I think about the cost of living, the idea where interest rates are for your first time buying a home. Like, to be a first-time homeowner, that's a huge part, like, for generations of the American dream. I mean, no hyperbole. It almost sounds trite to say it, but think about post-war America. How many people were able for the first time ever to be a homeowner, and what that means, not just for you, but for your family's future, to own a piece of property. That's a huge part of the American dream, of advancing the wheel for the next generation economically. And the first time I bought a home, had a rental apartment in 1991 in a brand new high-rise in Atlanta. The first place I ever put my name on a lease by myself. Cool. It was awesome. Yeah. And by the way, not only did nothing ever go wrong, I know for a fact if it had, somebody would have come right up and fixed it because I used to see those guys all the time. I buy a condo in 1992. I'm like, I got to be a homeowner. It's time I put my own money into my own pocket. The first weekend we move into our condo, my toilet explodes basically, not into my unit, but into the unit right below me.
Bad diet?
No. Sorry, a pipe exploded. It just leaked. I had to go down, and right away I get a call like, the guy below you, his bathroom is flooded, and it's your toilet's fault. And I literally said to the condo person called, and I said, well, are you going to fix that? And the woman on the phone, she honestly laughed. She said, I'm with the condo association. I'm not a plumber.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, I'm sorry. And by the way, also, she was such a jerk. She said to me, well, you're not a rock star in this building. You have to deal with this. That's what she literally said that.
Damn.
And I was like, good God, lady. I've been here for 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, it was awful. Moved into a rental house after that. First night, all true. First night in a rental house. Okay, so here's the deal. We're in the condo for a few years, and then we're like, let's get a house. And then I said, brilliant idea, let's rent a house for a year to really figure out what we want out of a house. Actually, it was kind of smart. Because we've been in this little
kitchen.
But but for neighborhoods, I wanted a bigger space. I wanted to get a dog. That was literally what it was.
Yeah.
I wanted a big dog, and I didn't want to have to deal with an elevator. We rented a house. The first weekend, I put all my drum. I have like 6 drum kits and all the equipment, and there's a big basement, and I stick it all in the basement. The first weekend we're there, it floods. and I open the door to the basement and I smell water, and I am it's Saturday night at midnight. We had just gotten back from the bar. I'm freaking out. I call the landlord. In 7 minutes, he and 2 dudes are there. Every piece of equipment's up those stairs. They're dealing with it till the sun comes up. It was like it never happened. It was incredible.
Well, that's something that doesn't happen with my generation. So this guy in my life has a roommate, and one day the roommate was looking around, working in his office, and there was a squirrel in the house. So they have a squirrel in their house.
Yeah.
And the first thing that I would do is call the landlord and get the squirrel out, figure out where it's coming in, all this stuff. Like, let's just take care of this. Instead, these men, they're men. They want to trap the squirrel.
Yes.
Put on some gloves.
They trap the squirrel, they get him out, and then he comes back. And my friend is like,
plug the hole.
Well, my friend is like, there's a bunch of squirrels. There's got to be like 2 or 3. I'm like, dude, that's the same squirrel. The squirrel just comes in, gets a little peanut butter, and then this nice man just takes him out of the house very gently, lets him out, comes right back in. This must have happened like 10 times.
Have to crush his head.
Yeah, what am I missing here? It's a rat with a bushy tail.
You did say these were men, right?
Yes, men.
Okay. Right,
older than me.
Okay.
And so they finally take it to like a couple miles away and let it out. But I'm like, dude.
Change the peanut butter flavor. The squirrel won't like it. They're very particular.
I thought you were going to say change the flavor by adding rat poison.
Right. That's exactly where I thought you were going with that. We had to dress this up a little bit.
And Rosemary and I had 2 cats back in the day. We had Marbles, who was just solid black and just sat there like an appendage of my wife. And we named her Marbles as in she's lost her marbles, and she really did nothing. She lived to be 21 years old, just sitting around. Yeah. Binky was the wild cat who would kill animals like there was no tomorrow. I mean, Binky would leave the house. Marbles never went outside. Binky would walk outside. 3 minutes later, squirrel, snake, bird, anything right in the house. She brought birds into the house that weren't dead yet, and they're flying around the house. She was awesome.
Yeah, that's a sign of affection.
My buddy Andrew is at the house one day, and I'm telling him about Binky's exploits, and he goes, I got squirrels in my attic. Could I borrow Binky? I go, oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. And in fact, she was so successful that we never took her back because Binky and Marbles had started marking the house at that point and competing for territorial. Like they're 6 and 7. And they both decide, let's just pee all over the floorboards of everywhere, of the baseboards. Anyway, we gave Binky to Andrew. She cleared out that attic, and then she just lived there for like another 10 years, just in a neighborhood full of vermin. Happiest cat you ever saw.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that cat.
There was no humanely getting rid of a squirrel in our world. It was like, no, send in the Terminator.
You're right, though. The manual labor aspect is the part that bothers me the most. Like yesterday, I had all kinds of stuff to do. I'm running around, and in between, had to rake leaves. I hate it.
Yeah, right there in between. But you know what? Thank you for raking and not pulling out a leaf blower.
That's nice of you. You should just have your kids do that. They're old enough now.
They were in school.
Well, let's see. These things happen. The renting owning divide. Renting is you think it's not all it's cracked up to be until you own, and then suddenly you're like, I really wish I had a land. I wish I had. Well, you need a good landlord. You got to get the right people.
It's kind of the grass is greener. I do both every year.
Yeah,
rent and own. Because I own and then I rent sometimes, and it depends. Because as soon as you get in a house you own, and then half the stucco siding falls off, you wish you were renting.
That's how that works.
Yes, and then vice versa. Once you're renting, and you can't get, the house is falling apart, or the landlord gouges you, or does something like removes all your doors and windows because you don't pay your rent. Oof. I just read that story the other day. A lady in Vancouver, single mother, 2 children, got behind on her rent. And the landlord came over and removed her doors and windows in Vancouver.
That's so not Canadian.
That's not Canadian at all.
That's like Boston. That's not that's Philadelphia. That's total Philadelphia. That's not Vancouver.
You know what else is not even close to Canadian?
What's that?
Mike Evans' Hollywood Report.
It's very true.
Very far from Canada.
Very true.
And I hear there's a new Taylor Swift cruise. I'm very excited. Hang tight.
It's the KQ Morning Show. 92 KQRS.
I'm Steve Gorman. This is the KQ Morning Show. Thursday, November the 16th. Renting or owning? Which is worse? We're sharing horror stories from the rental years and the ownership years. Oh, the American dream. Sometimes it becomes a nightmare as soon as you sign that mortgage, baby. Interest rates being what they are and trees falling as they do, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to weigh in with us, is it worse to be the tenant or the owner or both? Is it just a pain in the ass regardless? Let us know. KQ Talk and Text line 651-989-ROCK. You can always hit us up on the Facebook page. That's kind of where we started the day. Right now, we're going to take a quick diversion west to the desert, ladies and gentlemen, for the Mike Evans Hollywood Report. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. This report, as always, brought to you by Marcus Theaters. I got one movie review for you today. I got 4 movie reviews for you tomorrow. And with Thanksgiving coming, lots of movies, so we'll get to those. And
I like it.
Best place to see a movie's Marcus.
Yeah.
So, Steve, Taylor Swift, turns out, is a real estate mogul. 8 years ago, she bought an $18 million 7-bedroom compound in Tribeca, New York, from Lord of the Rings director Peter Jackson.
Okay.
And she has added to her portfolio 3 condos costing $10 million each next to that compound in Tribeca.
Nice.
She owns property in Los Angeles and Miami.
Oh, bless her.
Meanwhile, her main residence is in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And now rumors she's looking at mansions in Kansas City where Travis Kelce lives.
You knew that was coming.
There it comes. I heard about this. I didn't believe it. You remember the story back in 2016, Gwyneth Paltrow and her family were skiing at Deer Valley.
Sure.
Over in Park City.
Oh, yeah.
And also skiing, there was a 76-year-old Terry Sanderson. And while they were both on the baby bunny run, either Gwyneth ran into Sanderson or Sanderson ran into Gwyneth, whatever. Well, Sanderson sued Paltrow for $3 million.
Sure he did.
And that was thrown out immediately.
Yeah, it was.
And then Sanderson sued her for $300,000. That was also dismissed. Nobody really heard. Well, here we are 7 years later, and that story will be played out in a musical opening up in London next week.
As well it should be.
Is that unbelievable?
Oh, man.
I love it. That's where I need, art for the win. That's what I say for that one. Congratulate whoever had the idea to write a musical about that. I congratulate you. And then whoever went ahead and executed it and cast it and rehearsed it and is going to open, my God, give them a blue ribbon.
It's
Probably hilarious.
Yeah. Movie review. The movie is Maestro, and the Maestro is Leonard Bernstein.
Right.
I love biographies, and this one is full of romance and music and drama and some secrets. So Leonard Bernstein was very happily married for years. And those same years, he was also very happy with his gay lover. Sometimes this story gets a little artsy-fartsy, yet it is heartwarming and it's also heartbreaking. Written, directed, and stars Bradley Cooper. I think he could get an Oscar nomination. This is going to be a classic.
Wow.
Carrie Mulligan's in it, too. I love her.
She is great in everything. The duality of man, a trope I never get tired of examining.
There you go. It's in theaters next week, and it'll be streaming on December 20th. Rated R, 2 hours long, 3 stars. And again, Bradley Cooper is fabulous.
Nice. Fair enough.
Here's a strange one for you. Movie news, my favorite actor. Oh, who is your favorite actor, by the way?
My favorite actor?
Yeah.
I'm a Peter Sellers guy. I don't mind. I got a lot. I don't know. It just came to mind for some reason because I love being there so much. But I don't know. I don't have like a list of favorites. They're all good. No. I'm sorry. I'm taking all that back. The gentleman's gentleman, Gene Hackman. There, I said it.
Oh yeah, he was great. My favorite actor, I think, is Denzel Washington.
Okay.
And he will play Hannibal, Carthaginian warrior, who attacks Rome atop an elephant.
Nice.
In a Netflix flick. It sounds kind of bizarre and horrible, but Denzel signed up. It'll be coming out early 2025. Denzel Washington playing Hannibal.
Why not?
Why not?
Do whatever he wants. He's earned it.
And I love this.
He's great.
From one extreme to the other, there's going to be a full-length feature film from the cartoon series the Coyote and Acme the Roadrunner.
I heard something about that.
Apparently, Netflix, Amazon, and Apple are all bidding for the rights to this movie. I love the Roadrunner and Coyote against the Acme. I thought they were fabulous.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's just an indelible part of all of our childhoods.
Something to look forward to. 4 movie reviews tomorrow and a surprise. Have a great day. Talk to you tomorrow. See ya.
Right on, Mike Evans. Thank you very much, sir. The musical about Gwyneth Paltrow skiing up on an old man and knocking him over. I would go see it.
Leonard Bernstein.
Leonard Bernstein. Stein. Well, this is the guy who says Oppenheimer. So, we've all got our crosses to bear, and pronunciation is just one of the many Mike Evans brings to the show every morning at that time.
It's fun.
It is fun. Bradley Cooper, that's the Lady Gaga movie guy.
Mm-hmm.
I get who do I
Star is Born.
Yeah, thank you. I was Bradley Cooper, and then there's another guy, and I always get the two of them confused.
Ryan Reynolds.
Cooper Bradley.
I can
Ryan
read your
Reynolds,
mind.
or is it? It is Ryan Reynolds. He's the guy that has the soccer club in Wales now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and he's married to Blake Lively?
Yes.
Okay, he wins.
He's so hot. I don't know. They're both so. I have a very special connection with Bradley Cooper because he started. He got a start in Alias, so I knew him before any all bitches knew him.
Right. Did I tell you about the time I was on the set of Alias?
Yeah.
What?
I mean, Steve still doesn't know him. You realize that. He just asked who the hell he was.
I get him confused with another guy. Now that you say that, I get it. Canadian fella, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
or no, that's Ryan Reynolds. He's Canadian.
Silver Linings Playbook.
Right.
That?
That's him. Okay.
Yeah, he's all right.
Yeah, the movie about all those
That was a good movie.
rational, reasonable,
Wedding Crashers.
classic Philadelphians.
True. He's a dank in Wedding Crashers.
So does anyone else? I mean, Mike Evans said, "Who's your favorite actor?" And I was literally like, "I don't know." And I mean, I said Gene Hackman, but hell, I just had to throw something out there. Do you have a favorite actor, Tony?
Jeff Bridges.
Oh, well, that's actually a pretty great answer.
I just love him and
is there
everything.
a guy do you have a guy, Zepp? Who's your favorite actor? Is that? I mean, that's a weird.
No.
I don't know.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I have favorite movies I like, actors that, do well in certain roles in movies, but, not just one I'd stick with and go, well, he's in that movie or she's in that movie, unless it's Jennifer Connelly, then I'll go see it.
Oh, sure. She bought my dream house in Brooklyn, bitch.
Did she?
Yeah. 17 Prospect Park West. I still think about it all the time.
If I was you, I wouldn't have moved out.
We were neighbors. We were neighbors for a brief hot minute. That was the house I walked by every day. I went, if my ship comes in, I'll buy that house. And then she bought it. And I was like, well, now I really have a crush on you.
Yeah.
For me, right now, if you say favorite actor, I don't know. But let me tell you what I'll watch. Anything with Jessica Chastain. Ooh.
Yeah, like her.
She's great in everything. Candace, favorite actor?
Male Al Pacino, female Jennifer Gardner.
God, of course, we knew that.
You should know this by now.
I do know that by now. I apologize for having forgotten. Let's have a history lesson. What do you say?
So what's up? We've got to bring in Gorman.
What happened to Gorman?
He's right here.
Yeah, he's right here.
Hey, Steve.
Oh, hey! What's up?
I'll tell you what's up. November the 16th, on this day 29 years ago, 1994, Major League Soccer announced it would start its inaugural season in 1996. Okay? And I'm a soccer jerk. And even I rolled my eyes. Oh, God, here we go again. Another American league. It won't go anywhere. And soccer haters love to talk about how long it's taken to become an official big-time sport. But comparatively, Major League Soccer is light years ahead. After 29 years, the NBA was in debt, saddled with a raging cocaine problem, and their finals games were shown on tape delay. After 29 years, the NHL had 6 teams. And after 29 years, the NFL had 10 teams. Major League Soccer right now with 30 teams, a broadcasting deal around the world. I mean, it's a very different place, sure, but at a time with far fewer options for eyeballs and entertainment dollars, the other leagues still way behind MLS's growth. Just want to say it. Just want to throw it out there. And if you don't care, I'm fine with it. Buffalo Sabres on this day in 1996 were about to host the Boston Bruins, and the giant scoreboard above center ice fell to the ice. Oh. The $4 million, 40,000-pound scoreboard literally just dropped like an anvil straight into the ice in the afternoon, moments after the ice had been filled with maintenance crew. No one was on the ice when it fell. Literally 60 seconds earlier, there was like 30 people out there. Can you imagine the sound? That's what I want to see. Yeah. Just the sound of one of those giant jumbotrons crashing into the ice.
Echo.
Maybe it is the anvil sound from Looney Tunes.
Man, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be great to see. This day in 2014, the singer of a band from Ireland called U2, his name is Bono.
All right, I was late on the trigger, but I found the sound.
That's quite all right.
Every time he mentions Bono, you have to play that now.
Bono was riding a bicycle in Central Park, New York City on this day in 2014 and was involved in what doctors called a high-energy bicycle accident. He was trying to avoid another guy on a bike, and he was a mess. Paramedics were called. Firemen got him out of there. He had a facial fracture involving the orbit of his eye, 3 separate fractures of his left shoulder blade, a fracture of his left humerus bone in his upper arm. There's nothing humorous about that. That last injury was particularly damaging. The bone shattered in 6 different places and came right through the skin. I mean, that was a mess and didn't get a lot of attention. Like they kind of were like, yeah, he had a problem. He's going to be okay. 5 hours of emergency surgery. Crazy. Bono almost lost the guy on a bicycle.
Was he planking on the bike or standing on the seat trying to do some fancy, a wheelie or something? High energy.
I don't know.
Someone must have been coming down a hill and just careened into him.
He was clearly in that one part of Central Park where no one had an iPhone on him at the time because I've been waiting for that video to surface for years.
We know anything about the other person? Gosh, I hope they're all right.
That guy got a knock on the door from some Irish mobsters later that night. No one's heard from him since. I hesitate to share this next story, but you know what? I'm going to go for it. In 1985, the number 1 song in America for a 2-week run from the Jefferson Starship. That's right. The most hated song of the classic rock era.
God, Tony, don't.
There it is. Oh. There it is. Your day is ruined.
I like that song.
The city by the bay, the city that rocks, the city that never stops.
It's because you weren't alive when it happened, Candace. That's why you like it. I'm sorry, but
it a little better,
for everybody like me who's now going, I mean, I'm saying it to myself. Steve, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to us? Man.
You guys are just full of
Slick
hate.
was cool.
Remember
when Grace Slick was cool before this song?
Oh, yeah. From White Rabbit to We Built This City in less than 100 years. That's progress, boy.
Knee deep in the hoopla.
I tell you what, no question about it.
Well, let's get... Is that it? Is that our history lesson?
I got to stop it there. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, we've been trying to, I think the morning started off and kicked up that old debate, better to rent a place to live or to own a place to live. And we don't want some reasonable argument about finances and that sort of crap. We want to hear your horror stories. We're going to decide for ourselves. We want to hear renting horror stories and home owning horror stories, things that went terribly wrong. Or maybe you've just got a sentient argument for it. I don't know. Give us a call here on the Talk and Text line this morning. We'd love to hear from you. 651-989-ROCK. Maybe we'll get something up on the KQ Facebook page. And please hang tight.
It's the KQ Morning Show, 92 KQRS. Zep, Tony, Candace, and Steve Gorman are the KQ Morning Show, 92 KQRS.
I'm Steve Gorman. This is the KQ Morning Show. It is Thursday, November the 16th. Later on the show today, we're going to be giving away tickets to something kind of cool, I would imagine. Oh, I don't know, just Eagles tickets for tomorrow night. Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Baby.
Not bad.
That's coming up in 1 hour at 8 o'clock. We're also going to have, we're going to talk to, I believe we've got Sam Ekstrom on the show today talking Vikings, correct? Is today Thursday? Am I confused?
Yes.
It is. We also have on the show today Peter Jesperson. Got a new book out.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too. Famously, the manager of The Replacements, less famously, the tour manager at times for REM, and a man who's worked with everybody from Paul Westerberg to Chris Christopherson. His new book is out. It's apparently fantastic, and we're going to speak with him also today. So we got a lot going on. Right now, we're discussing the fact that renting sucks, and boy, so does owning. What's worse? What are the best horror stories because you had to fix it, or is the best horror story because your landlord sucked? That's basically where we started.
Yeah.
I had a weird run First apartment I ever rented on my own. Nothing ever went wrong. It was a brand new building. It was like I should still live there today. It was 1991. I never had a problem in a year. Then I bought a condo, and immediately everything went sideways. The first week I was there, my toilet leaked down into the guy below me. The only silver lining of that was that he was a golfer and he had a deal with Ping, and he hooked me up with some clubs that cost, and I still have those clubs 30 years later. And every time I golf, someone goes, "Are those Ping Zings?" Looking at me like I'm in a Model T Ford. I'm like, "Yes, they are. I'm afraid to change them out." You saw those clubs, Zepp. You saw them in action.
I saw them work. Yeah, they still work very well. Yeah.
And then so that was my first week as a homeowner. Then I rented again. Had a flood first night, but the landlord showed up and dealt with it like a pro. It was amazing. Then I bought a house. First week in the house, it was infested with wasps, yellow jackets in the attic. I just had this up and down. It's like every time I moved anywhere, something happened immediately, and I was either thrilled to have a landlord or really pissed off that I owned the place. That's just kind of how it goes. You can't. It just never seems to work out.
Yeah, I remember renting an apartment on a building that's no longer there on 32nd and Nicollet, just an old rat trap. There was not a lock on the door. In fact, the apartment manager who hand wrote the lease for me spelled apartment wrong, by the way.
How do you spell it?
I don't know, AP. I don't even remember, but I just looked out. Oh, he forgot the R or something. I'm like, you didn't even spell apartment right. You're the apartment manager. And then, so I go downstairs. I'm in the basement apartment there, and there's no lock on the door. And I go back up. I said, you know, there's not a lock on my door. He goes, "Do you have furniture?" I have a chair and a bed. He goes, "I just push the chair in front of it at night." When you go, "Oh, okay. We'll go ahead and do that then." And then when I'm gone, I didn't have anything worth stealing in there anyway because they already stole it before I moved in out of my car while I was moving in, my stereo, which was the only thing of value to me. Off to the pawn shop I went. But I came home one day and there's a huge hole in the wall. Oof. And so up to the apartment manager I go. "Bill, there's a big hole in my wall. I did not put the hole in my wall." He goes, "Oh, yeah, we had to let ourselves in today. Got a lot of rats in the building, and they needed to punch a hole in the wall to go in and get the rats." And
what a dream place.
Your apartment was, like I said, they tore it down. It's something nice now. They have a nice apartment building over there now. It's something fairly swank. But, back in the day. So that wasn't a cool place to be.
No, not so much. Not so much.
Got the rats, though, I guess.
When I first moved to Atlanta, I rented a house with three other guys, all the band. It was a proper band flop house in an in-town neighborhood called Candler Park. 4 guys living there. 1 guy from one band, 3 guys from another, and then any number of other local musicians crashing on a nightly basis. You could walk in there some days, without exaggeration, there would be 12 people in the house.
To step over bodies.
100%. Everyone just crashed. And we signed a 6-month lease. That used to be a thing. It was $450 a month.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, for a 2-bedroom house with 2 big other rooms and a kitchen and a good bath, $450 a month. So I was like, well, I need $112.50 a month to live here. Yeah. I can panhandle that pretty effectively, I'm pretty sure. Right. So it was pretty great. I moved out after like 5 months. A friend of mine went to Europe for the summer. He was a student, and he gave me his apartment to watch. So I was like, cool, I'm out of the band house. So I got this great apartment to myself for a few months. And I went back over to the house a few weeks later, and I was like, "Are you guys going to sign up another 6-month lease?" And one of the dudes that lived there, he goes, "I don't think it's a good idea." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "Go to the kitchen." And I walked into the kitchen, and there was just a giant hole in the floor. Yeah. When I say giant, I mean like longer than I am tall, wider across. Just the kitchen floor had just opened up to nothingness. It looked like the portal to hell. And I was like, "What happened?" And he goes, "No one knows." Well, no one will cop to whatever happened. And I was like, "You got to get the hell out of here." That house now is worth. The neighborhood got totally gentrified. Mm-hmm. Somebody bought it, refurbished. I mean, I drive by there still if I'm in Atlanta sometimes and look at it, and I'm like, these people have no idea what happened in this house 30-something years ago.
Yeah, you don't want to know.
Not quite the Manson family, but pretty darn close. Short of the murders, pretty much everything else.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I've lived in those flop houses where you had, I don't know how many people live there at any one time. There could be, like you said, a dozen. There might only be 5.
Yeah.
But there had to be stuff. I remember looking for a place to rent around the radio station there in Dinkytown and going and looking at a couple of places that were college houses. They just rented them to college kids. And I thought, well, I'll rent one of these pads. And you went in and you could just sense the DNA was in the, in the structure of the house. It wasn't going anywhere. It was a mess. Some of those just need to be burned down.
My son's at Indiana University, and almost 2 years ago, January of 22, he's changing places. He had an apartment for the fall semester, and then a bunch of kids are moving and changing, so he was going to change from an apartment into a house with 3 of his buddies. So it's January of 22, and he and I drive up from Nashville. We move him into this new house, and that involves what he didn't tell me was he's on the 3rd floor of a house, and we have to move like his chest of drawers and a bed up there. So we have a full day of moving crap. We're back and forth from the old apartment to the new house. And when we walk into the house, it's January. We're the first guys back for the semester. It's a Saturday afternoon. And the house is freezing cold. And it's like 20 degrees outside. I walk over to the thermostat, and whoever had left in December didn't set it down to like 64 degrees. They turned it off. And so I turned it back. I said, well, the heat's off. This is ridiculous. I turned the heat back on. And we just up and down the stairs, moving stuff in and out. 3 or 4 trips from the apartment back to the house. And at no point during that entire day did he or I flush a toilet or turn on a sink. Just didn't have to. Every time we needed to use the bathroom, we were at the other apartment. So then we finished the move. We go out to get dinner, and then one of his other roommates shows up that evening. We're a few blocks away having a pizza. And all of a sudden, my son's phone rang, and this guy goes, "You got to get over here. The house is flooding." Because the house had been cold for a month because the last guy out turned the thermostat off. So, of course, all the pipes froze. And that didn't even occur to me when I walked into a frozen house. I didn't think, I didn't think, oh, my God, I bet the pipes are frozen. I just turned the heater back on. Well, as soon as this kid flushed the toilet, man, they all just burst. I still have videos in my phone. We show up at this house, 10 p.m., 20 degrees outside, and it's just flooding like you've never seen. The sprinkler system got triggered. The pipes wouldn't turn off. We couldn't find the water main to turn it off. It's a rental unit on a college campus. Saturday at 10 p.m., the rental office is not their emergency number's useless. It was. We had to call the fire department over.
Oh my God!
By the time they got there, I mean, it was incredible. And all I'm thinking is, man, renting to college kids. This is probably just another. This probably happens all the time. Insane.
They have very few standards. Yeah, the Beehive down in Mankato. When we moved Taylor in, I was going up the stairs. They had a stairway on the outside. Of course, she lived also on the. Well, it wasn't a 3rd floor, it was a 2nd story, but it seemed a lot higher than that. So they have a wooden staircase that goes up the outside of the house to an upstairs door, or you can go into the upstairs apartments. As I'm carrying a box up there, the stairs collapsed off the side of the house onto the ground.
Oop.
And then the landlord gives us the old, well, you got to fix that. I'm like, I'm going to throw this box at you. You see this toaster in my hand? You're going to be wearing it. I'm going to beat you with the toaster.
Right.
You've heard of beat the toaster? I'm going to beat you with a toaster. Anyway, we exchanged some words and more words. I was constantly calling him, and they have bats in their closet. Yeah. Well, I mean, could you get them out of there? There's a bunch of women that live there. Apparently, they're not cool with bats in the closet. But so, another dad and I had to drive down there and get the bats out of the closet, which was kind of fun because we brought tennis rackets. Those little suckers, bounce off walls.
Oh my God, that's pretty good. Yeah, I think I also mentioned earlier, since I got to town here, well, Zepp, you rent and own at times, depending on where you are in the world. We've had a house in Nashville for 20 years, and now I'm renting a place here. And the house. I mean, it's funny because I was in Nashville a couple weeks ago. I've been back a few times this year, but for 95% of my time, I've been here since I got here in January. And when I walk into that house, the first thing I think is, oh, crap. All I see is what needs to be repaired or fixed, and it's on me to do it. Whereas I get back to Minneapolis, and it's awesome. I'm not worried about a damn thing because there's someone who will show up in a smart work shirt and a toolbox, and he knows how to use it, and he'll fix it right away.
Yeah.
Friendly. Yeah, there's always something. Always.
That's our listeners right there. They're a bunch of, roll up your sleeves and get the job done people. Like most of the people I think I know. I just tend to know and hang out with those people. They're like, a fixer-upper? Well, that's the greatest thing in the world. Every day when you get home, you have something to work on. I'm like, what is wrong with you? And that's Donna, Gammy, Michelle, Ron, everyone. You've got to own. Then you can fix it yourself. I don't think they're getting the point, Steve. We must be the oddballs.
Yeah. No, I'm. You know what I'm good at? Hanging photos and stuff. I can hang pictures, framed things. I can hang them straight, and I can eyeball them really well. That's about it.
Yeah.
Piping and electrical work. Nah.
I'm so not handy, and it's so demeaning. I just realize how worthless I am. Something has to be fixed.
Comedian Nate Bargatze, we've had him on before. He's fantastic. New Netflix special out right now. Not on this particular special. Maybe a couple ago, he was talking about having the handy. My wife hired a man to come be a better man than me in my house. And he goes, and of course, the handyman never shows up when she's home. The handyman shows up when he's home. Very emasculating. He has to stand there and hold on, let me get that. I'll hang that picture frame for you. I mean, just simple things where he's sitting there going, I'm a comedian. You know any good jokes? I mean,
try to look busy.
Right, exactly. I'm gonna go outside and lay some sod while you're fixing that, or I don't know what you do, but it's a thing.
Hey.
I'm not very I try and then I fail, and what would have cost a handyman maybe a couple of $100 to come fix now will cost about $1,000 to fix my repair.
Yeah, you just make it worse. You know what? This is life in Nashville, Tennessee. I've had people come into the house. Our house is 100 and something years old. It's constantly needs something. And I've had people for, 20 years coming over to do something, always. And if they happen to look at something on a wall or maybe they just put it together, they'll go like, oh, you drummer? You guy in the band? I'm like, yeah. You have no idea how many guys doing home repairs in Nashville. Can I give you my tape?
Oh, of course.
My band's playing Friday night at the 5 Spot. Would you want to come out and see my band? And I'm always like, oh, yeah, awesome, man. Maybe. Maybe.
Yeah.
I also might eat my own foot.
I'll get sometimes, I always wanted to go into voice work.
Sure.
That's constantly, anyone with a deep voice. I have every pizza rental kid in Minneapolis that wants to be a DJ apparently delivers to me. So I noticed your name. I was wondering, do you need any help down at the station? I'm like, you've been just a lot of help tonight. Why would I want to lose my pizza guy? I mean, look at you. You got here early. This thing's still piping hot in my hands. I can barely hold on to it. I don't want you in radio, man. I want you delivering pizzas. But
this is why guys don't want anyone helping them out, so they're not bothered. Correct?
What do you mean? I'm sorry, what?
You have to have people come and do stuff for you. Is that why? So you don't get bothered? Like, oh, you're Steve Gorman. I'm going to bother you.
What? I've lost the plot completely.
She's trying to stir it up.
I just think boys are dumb.
Boys are smart when they admit how dumb they are. I'm smart because I admit I'm dumb. Okay? So put that in your pipe and smoke it, stoner.
You know what, Candace? Girls are smart.
Yeah.
But guess what? We date girls. What do? You date boys.
So
dumb boys. So the old switcheroo back at you.
Girls are pretty.
Yeah.
That's what they call a boomerang conversation. Didn't see that one coming back to hit you in the back of the head, did you?
No,
Candace?
I didn't.
We'll keep it going. Renting versus owning. I love reading the Facebook page. There's quite a debate going on right now, renting versus owning. If you want to call something in, a horror story, or a good argument for or against either, 651-989-ROCK. And the big baby names are out. That's always interesting. I always go, baby names? Well, that's stupid. And then I click on it and sit there and go through it and through it and through it. Maybe we'll click on that for you here at 7:30. Eagles tickets at 8 o'clock. Hang tight.
It's the KQ Morning Show. 92 KQRS.
I'm Steve Gorman. This is the KQ Morning Show. It is Thursday, November the 16th. In 30 minutes from right now, we're going to give away tickets to see the Eagles tomorrow night. That's a pretty good set of tickets right there. That's the kind of folks we are here. At 8:30, Sam Ekstrom is going to call as we discuss the Vikings, who, in case you forgot, are on a bit of a tear with 5 straight wins, looking for number 6 Monday night in Denver. Sunday night in Denver. Yeah. I'm excited about that game. I'll be staying up late and watching that bad boy because I think it's going to be tight. I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a multiple score game. That's going to come down to the wire. And I can't wait. Peter Jesperson is going to call in at 9. He's got a new book out. He managed the replacements and has done a whole bunch of other things over the years. A fascinating cat. And we're looking very forward to speaking with him as well. We're talking renting versus owning today. Not so much in it's better to own because of the investment, but just in terms of what's a bigger pain in the ass, having to find your own guy to fix it or fix it yourself, or calling the landlord and then they suck too. I mean, basically, that's what we're looking at, his horror stories. On the Facebook page, we've got a lot of posts. And pretty much everybody's going with the whole, now you're just throwing your money away if you rent, buy it yourself, and then you're not making the landlord rich. No, we get that. We understand long-term financially, a big part of the American dream is home ownership. That's something that for the last 70 years has separated us from those heathen Europeans.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Just looking for a reason to say heathen Europeans. Thanks.
Right, exactly. Financially, I think it does make more sense to own and equity and all that stuff. Yeah, but we're just looking, because I'm scrolling through the KQ Facebook post, and every realtor apparently in town is checking in and talking about escrow and equity. And we get that.
Yeah, but what if your furnace breaks?
Then you got to fix your furnace. Yeah.
Or if you're able to, if you rent, you can be in a place that has a workout room, a pool, a party room. There's all that cool stuff. Party room.
Other single people having fun right next door to you, but not inviting you over, so you get to listen to them having fun, and you feel isolated and alone.
Well, that hurts.
Kind of stuff.
Hey, man, it's by the way, you laugh. Our where Rosemary and I live, walk out the other day with Chauncey, and we're just walking down the sidewalk, and in a unit that's just like ours, there's just like a raging party going on, a bunch of happy people. They all look beautiful, cocktails, music playing, and I'm on the sidewalk with a dog going, we don't have parties like that. I had this whole thing. I was like 24 years old again going, I wish I had friends like that. They look perfect. And then I'm like, I'm 58. I have a full life. I'm just going to keep walking now. Right. But for a hot minute, I was like, they probably go to the pool all summer and they're having more fun. They use that pool table. I've never even shot one game of pool since I got here.
Shrimp cocktail.
Exactly.
I will tell you this, having bought a house and then finding out that my neighbor was, can I use the word idjit? Because yesterday I got Zebulon in. If I get idjit in today, which I believe I just did, I win another bet there, Matt. That's $20 you owe me.
Fair enough.
Zebulon was a fun one yesterday. But anyway, so then you're stuck, you just bought the home. They're there. If you're renting, I'll see you in a year, I just got to get through this lease, and then I'm out of here, you jerk. I do remember renting in Loring Park area. Many, many years ago, before we had the first child, Taylor came along, and we went in, and I remember them saying, we're taking out all this crappy old carpet, and we're putting in beautiful, wonderful hardwood under this old apartment building I covered up in the 50s and 60s with the crappy carpet. Going to pull it out and have hardwood in these apartments when you move in. Fantastic. We love it. Guess what shoes sound like on hardwood that are surrounding you, above you and below you? Oof. Clomp, 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 clomp. Yeah. So, there's good and bad. I think we have someone on the line.
Candace, caller.
Esther from Minneapolis.
Esther, good morning.
Good morning.
What do you got for us?
I just wanted to let you guys know that you're missing the best part of owning a house. In 10 years, my rent is going to be basically the same. Your rent is going to be double.
See, there it is. There's Esther bringing the pragmatic approach. That's very true.
That was,
but you know what? Less Advil. You know what I mean? I'm just gonna let other people hurt themselves making the repairs. That's how I look at it.
How much it cost to replace the roof on my rental house? $0.
Esther, thank you for the call. We appreciate you listening. On the Facebook page, LaDonna wrote, "This is pretty much sums it all up. Let's face it, adulting is not fun. Both can be nightmares." There you have it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
there you have it, LaDonna. Yeah. That's pretty much how it works.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking forward to yet another winter because I don't have to shovel. There's the sidewalks. Someone else does that for me.
Good for you.
Open the door to our place, and that sidewalk's just clear. There's a little salt that's already been blown in the morning. There's a guy. He does it that's his job. You know what my job is? Just to walk out and not shovel snow.
I have to rake the roof of an older house. I have to worry about ice dams with a big 20-foot rake.
Really?
Oh.
There's a guy killed doing that last year.
Oh, I don't go up there.
I don't want to know about that.
No. He pulled it down on top of him. But this was out west. There was 3 feet of snow on top of his house. He got the big rake up there, just pulled it on top of himself. And 31-year-old dude found him 3 days later, dead.
Oops.
Yeah, that's a big oops. But I thought the same. When you rent, you think, well, I don't have to do all those little lousy things. Although I did buy a townhome one time, and the association took care of a lot of that, so that was kind of cool.
Sure.
Best of both worlds there. But then I do remember renting a house over in the Como neighborhood, little house from a sweet old lady that lived across the street. Wonderful. But then I ended up having to shovel her driveway and sidewalk too because I have a conscience and I couldn't. And my bay window looked right at her as she would come struggling out there with her little plastic shovel, and I'd be, the Vikings would just be starting, and I'd be like, God,
my osteoporosis.
Oh my
Brian.
God, she knew what she was doing. She's like, "What time's kickoff?"
Sure.
Okay, where's my galoshes? I'm gonna get out there. Candace, do we have another caller?
Vicky from St. Michael.
Vicky, good morning.
Good morning.
What's happening?
Well, so a couple quick stories. I'll try to make them quick about renting a room while I was in school.
Mm-hmm.
Lived with a 80-some-year-old lady who, not sure if it was dementia, Alzheimer's, or just pure crazy, but came home late one night from work about midnight, and her door was open. So I thought, of course, there's a burglar or a murderer in the house. And I was trying to check on her, calling her name through the house to find out she was sitting in the bathtub. And I said, I wanted to make sure nothing happened to you. And she rolled up that washcloth and threw it at me and hit me right in the face. So I tossed it back to her in the bathtub and said, well, okay, good night. I wake up to 2 policemen in my room going through my purse and looking around, and I said, what's going on? Well, the lady had called the police on me for, I'm not really sure what the reason was, but, and then I moved out finally, and here come the cops at the door, and I said, I bet $100 this is from Emma. And she claimed that I stole her flowered sheets and gave them to my sister's kids who just moved back from Arizona.
Sure she did.
Master plan.
You had that. I was like, you sound like the kind of gal that's going to take those flowered sheets and give them to your sister's kids.
I mean, what's more inviting
they had Ninja
than
Turtle sheets, so I said, no, they wouldn't want these. So, I said, you're welcome to come in and look. But they declined.
Well, that's probably for the best.
Yeah, so there's my story.
I appreciate that story very much. Thanks for listening, and thanks for calling in. That's pretty good.
Love you. You're doing a great job, and welcome to KQ.
Thank you very much, love. I appreciate that greatly.
You're going to get some flowered sheets in your mailbox.
It's just a matter of time now. Whoo, baby.
All sorts of 80-year-old skin flakes all over them.
Oh, God.
Why did you have to add that?
Wow. We were almost out. And you had to throw the 80-year-old skin flakes at me.
I would not steal sheets from a teenager or an 80-year-old. That's all I'm saying. Nothing wrong with it. I'm looking forward to, being an 80-year-old exfoliating like hell myself someday.
It's all about the exfoliation.
Baby names. Get me out into baby names.
Oh, by the way, this is fascinating. The list of BabyCenter.com released its annual report on top baby names. check this out. Okay, granted, Olivia still, still the undisputed heavyweight champion of a U.S. new baby names, Olivia. My God, that was number one. Like when we were having babies back in the 2000, 2002, we had our kids, and both times we thought about Olivia, and it was so popular. We're like, well, we don't want to have, it's like calling your baby Jane in 1951. It was like, no, we're not going to go with Olivia. It's a beautiful name, but everyone's on it. It's still number one, but this is what jumps off the list to me. You know what came back strong this year, up over 1,000%? Barbara. As in Barbie.
Oh, of course.
Barbara is on the comeback trail in a big way. If you're going to be hanging, if you're a school teacher, if you're an elementary school teacher, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now, you're going to be having an awful lot of Barbies in your classroom.
What about Opie?
Where did Opie go? Is Opie short for something?
I don't know. Who was Opie? Wasn't that
it's Andy Taylor.
Griffith.
Andy,
Opie,
it's a Opie Taylor.
Yes, Paul.
Andy
Griffith.
The big movie of the year, Oppenheimer. I thought maybe Opie would make a comeback along with Barbara. Is that Barbie's full name?
Barbara. Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
It is. Yeah, it's Barbara. Babs. I would have gone. I'd go with Babs if I were named Barbara. If I were named Barbara, there'd be a lot of things I'd have to consider. But I think Babs is a good one. Mm-hmm. I've always liked when I see Barbara Streisand, I always refer to her as Babs. It just makes me laugh.
Isn't that funny?
She's just not a Babs.
She would be offended by that.
She would be offended by it. She'd say, it's Bob's. Pronounce it right.
Yeah.
Little Apple joke there. See what I did there. I did see there was a great joke on Saturday Night Live this week on the Weekend Update. So the story broke. Barbara Streisand's autobiography came out, or her memoir. Mm-hmm. And she said that Siri, when Apple phones, and when they introduced Siri was mispronouncing her name. I don't know what Siri was calling her. Maybe it was Streisand or something. And she tells the story. I called Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, and said, "You've got to fix this." and on Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live, Seth Meyers? No, what's the guy on the guy who does it now? Colin Jost.
Yeah.
He said this was taken from the chapter "More Relatable Moments with Barbara Streisand." I still love my favorite Streisand thing is that she was so mad that someone put a photo of her home, her beachfront home, online, that she went public to say, I need this removed from the internet.
Right.
And so, of course, then all 7 billion people on Earth Googled it and searched it and shared it simultaneously.
Of course.
Fantastic. You can listen to this show on your phone. Stream 92KQRS. Listen anywhere you go. You can also simply tell your smart speaker, hey, play 92KQRS. It's just that simple.
It's the KQ Morning Show, 92KQRS. Zep, Tony, Candace, and Steve Gorman are the KQ Morning Show. 92 KQRS.
I'm Steve Gorman. This is the KQ Morning Show. It is Thursday, November the 16th. I Won't Back Down by Tom Petty, his greatest song. I'm not saying it's his best. It's not even my favorite, but that's the greatest one. And I'll tell you why. Because he was the victim of an arson attempted murder. They burned his damn house down with he and his family in it. And when I say they've never been caught, but it was intentional. They were home. Somebody torched his house in a manner that the whole thing went down in a matter of minutes. It was a professional hit that did not succeed because they escaped. And then he wrote I Won't Back Down in the weeks following it, driving around homeless in L.A. There was a Goodrich Tire Company TV commercial that asked if they could use one of his songs, and he said no. So they wrote a song and had a guy that sounded just like Tom Petty sing it, and Tom Petty sued them, and he got a settlement from them. And a week or two later, that fire happened.
Wow.
I'm not suggesting that the Goodrich Tire Company tried to kill Tom Petty, but they did. Allegedly. They never found out who did it. But it was literally a professional. Think about that. You're Tom Petty. You're at the height of your powers. You are one of America's most treasured singer-songwriters, and you're at home with your family at night, and you're like, I think I smell smoke, and you run out of the house and watch the whole thing burn down, like, in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
Crazy story from Tom Petty's life.
Bizarre.
It really is. And homes just don't burn down.
No, they don't.
Fast, unless there is some accelerant or, and it was investigated. I read quite a bit about it. but, they weren't able to put the finger on anyone.
Never.
But, if you've got the deep pockets and you can cover those kinds of things up, grease the right people. I'm just saying.
If you've got a London fog trench coat with pockets and you stick your hands in them, then you could look at the camera and go, if you or anyone has any information about this crime. What was that show? Unsolved Mysteries.
Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack.
I always love he go, if you. His way of saying if you or anyone has any information. Man, Unsolved Mysteries was it. Can you imagine the people that produced and cashed in on Unsolved Mysteries if they'd known the true crime spree that was only 30 or 40 years away?
No.
They would have never pulled the plug on that show. That was the original.
Oh, yeah.
They did a remake the last couple of years.
Oh, recently?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, I missed it. Who was the host? Stack's hologram?
Dolly Parton. I just didn't.
Pee Wee Herman.
If you have any information on who could have done this, who lit that fire? That tobacco shack went up like it was a firework factory.
You kind of sound like Mr. Hankey from South Park.
I was going to say, I don't think I'm doing much of a Dolly here.
The killer Mr. Hankey, though.
Well, I tell you what, I can play all these instruments and I can sing these songs, but I can't solve these crimes without your help.
Eyes up here, mister.
I tell you what, it went up like a wig factory, and I tell you, I know about how wigs can burn.
Sound like Dustin Hoffman and Tootsie.
Golly, man, that's a good movie. I forgot the fact, but how about the fact that Bill Murray just has a tiny part as like the roommate in Tootsie?
Oh, he's great in that.
He's so funny in it. It was on recently. I say recently, like within the last 5 years, like during the pandemic, it was on, and the kids were like, "Kids, gather around at a good old fashioned comedy," and they actually did enjoy it. But at one point, my son, he goes, "Why Bill Murray's just like a side guy?" I go, "Yeah, he was already huge when this came out." But anyway, that's all for another day.
It's the KQ Morning Show. 92 KQRS.
I'm Steve Gorman. This is the KQ Morning Show, Thursday, November 16th. Momentarily, we will be joined by Sam Ekstrom as we're going to look ahead to the Vikings game at Denver Sunday night. Boy, that's going to be a big one. I mean, we've been talking about this team all season long with very different tones. The first few weeks, just a grease fire. Everyone's panicking. Everyone's freaking out. And then if you had said, well, what's going to happen is they're going to lose Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins and then Cam Akers and then a few other players, and then it's all going to make sense. If somebody had said that to you, you would have slapped them with a fish. You would have just said, no, come here. Let me slap you across the face with this northern pike.
I got grounded for that.
Is that true?
For slapping my brother with a fish, yeah.
Attaboy. Yeah, I'd love to slap someone with a fish now that I think about it. But then here we are, 5-game winning streak, and the first game of that streak, correct me if I'm wrong, was in Green Bay when Kirk got hurt. Or no, that was the second game of the... Or maybe that was the third. I don't know. You know what? I can't remember.
Blur.
I feel like Josh Dobbs has already been here for 3 months. He's only played 2 games. He's only had 2 starts, one on the road, one at home, both wins. So that is still kind of amazing to think about and exciting. But in the meantime, as we prepare for Denver, a team that we all watched Monday night, the Broncos went into Buffalo and somehow pulled a win out. The Broncos were the worst team in the league the first few weeks, but they, in a very different way, but kind of like the Vikings, they've course corrected, or they're certainly on their way towards figuring it out. But the Buffalo Bills, that's a grease fire to be on. I mean, without a doubt, this is the fourth year in a row they're completely under achieving, if you will. Are we expecting too much, or are they under delivering, or is it both?
With the Buffalo Bills, they're under-delivering. Josh Allen just isn't being Josh Allen. I mean, and maybe he is, but he's playing more to his faults than his strengths like he did a couple of seasons ago. And, I mean, when you hear someone like James Kurtzel, our former fearless leader, diehard Buffalo Bills fan, his tweet yesterday was talking about trading Josh Allen.
Oh, wow.
What can we get for Josh Allen?
That's
where the morale of Buffalo is right now, and just throwing picks left and right. He's, because he's so talented. He's got the big gun. He's trying to force it.
It's a gunslinger.
He's a gunslinger, and gunslingers, sometimes miss. They get themselves into these seasons, right, where they just start throwing a lot of picks. And I mean, we'd see that with Favre, great quarterback, but he would try to force it and just take the team with him and throw some really big picks at some very bad times. So that's where the Bills are at right now.
Well, and he had a couple of years where he seemed to have turned the corner, and that's coincidentally when Brian Daboll was his OC, who's now the head coach of the Giants.
That's a big difference.
And yeah, it is. It's funny. I mean, I've been thinking about. Josh Allen is a great talent, but the better your player, the better your coach better be. What was Michael Jordan before Phil Jackson? He was a playoff competitor. You know what I mean? What was? There's so many examples of until the right coach shows up. What was Patrick Mahomes in college? He was an amazing talent who won 60% of his games, maybe.
Right.
But he got Andy Reid. When you have that incredible talent, when you've got the guy who's top of the shelf, you've got to put the right person that can look at him and say no. It's that simple. Like
KLC seems to be bringing out the best in Dobbs too. There's some spark there.
There's something very real about that. I used to say in a band, I was like, man, I wish we had a coach. I really wish we had. Well, we kind of did. Our manager was amazing at that, but then eventually, there's only you don't actually bring a whistle into the dressing room.
Yeah,
you can't make us run laps. But boy, we could have used one.
Back it with some real authority. I think O'Connell is great for Dobbs, for a lot of reasons. First of all, he's a quarterback's coach, before he was a head coach. Plus, he was in that position, He was, maybe not with all the talent. Sorry, Coach O'Connell. With all the talent that Dobbs can bring to the table. But, he was that quarterback that was trying to find a place to fit in and make a team and try to find the right. So I think he can communicate with them and, just really seems to be coaching the hell out of this team. And remember when we got started, those first 5 games, all the fumbles, all the screw-ups, all the penalties.
Incredible.
We were looking at the coaching.
Yep.
We got this thing together. The clock management in the last 5 minutes of it seemed like every game they were losing was a fiasco. But, coaching staffs can kind of turn things around as well, and they're constantly improving and self-evaluating, and the Vikings are making it work.
We go through this. We go through this every season. We forget, and I think the more advanced football becomes offensively, and the more intricate and dynamic you have to be. This is a sport. You have 32 teams. They all have a starting quarterback, and at least half of them suck. Right? I mean, think about how when you find your quarterback, you are good to go for a decade. The game has changed over the years. When we were all kids, every quarterback in the league was about as good as everyone else. I mean, there were guys that stood out, clearly, but you didn't have grease fire quarterbacks. And that's not because the quarterbacks today aren't as good or they were better back then, but the game has changed. The rules have changed. The focus has changed so much that quarterback carries so much of the water for your team and your franchise, both on and off the field. They got to be the CEO, the face of the franchise too.
Yeah.
So it's such a much more. No one wants Ken Stabler as their quarterback right now. He's giving post-game pressers with a cigarette in his hand. It's like and just cussing up a blue streak. That's not going to fly in the modern NFL. But with all that said, then you got a guy like Josh Dobbs who come in, who's a relative. I mean, he's an unknown quantity. If I hadn't lived in the state of Tennessee, I wouldn't know who he was. I wouldn't have had any idea. That I wouldn't have thought, man, this kid might work. He's actually a really good football player and really smart. It's kind of going to the place now with every passing day. The more we look at Josh Dobbs, it gets weirder and weirder because now you start looking at stats. He has completed 67% of his passes since he got here.
Yeah.
He's got a 101 quarterback rating, and he's played against 2 teams that are both ranked in the top 10 of the defenses in the league. Yeah. And this is a guy who's still learning his teammates' names. I mean, it's crazy. He and T.J. Hawkinson had some throwing sessions together in Nashville in the last few off seasons, coincidentally. So they actually, this kind of that does check out. They already had some familiarity. But Jordan Addison, KJ, JJ, he's never seen these, never been in a room with these guys, and he's hitting 70% of his passes already. It's pretty astonishing.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, there's just a lot of hope. There's a lot of expectation and excitement there. It's still, we're talking about a couple of games against not great teams. Granted, the Saints had a pretty good defense that they brought to town. But that's why I like this game. We're not talking about the 49ers, who are very much back on track. We're not talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. who can really bring it. They lost a big one to Denver in their division. Just kind of a shocker there. But, we're not talking about one of the NFL elite teams that they're going to play, but they're going to go play in a tough environment, outdoors here late into the fall season, with a team that is surging and pretty well coached and with a veteran quarterback and a pretty good defense. So this is a good next step for Josh Dobbs and this Minnesota offense that's trying to figure it all out together. I was looking at the injury report. Doesn't look like Justin Jefferson is going to be back with that hamstring. Of course, he's saying all the right things, trying to get back as quickly as he can, but it just doesn't look like the kind of game you want to. You don't rush hamstrings. You'd be lucky to get him back this season. And if this team keeps winning, I mean, you want JJ back healthy 100% when you hit the Lions the last 3 weeks of the season, I think.
Hold off till January. You don't want to rush a hamstring. You definitely don't want to rush a hamstring at elevation. You know what I mean? Like, you got enough other issues. I don't think enough can ever be said. I realize we're talking about world-class athletes, not just in football, but basketball, and even especially almost, I'd say, hockey. The inherent home field advantage to playing for a team in Denver. It just I know when I go to Denver, if I go to Denver and I walk to a pub, I'm winded.
Right.
The first couple days I'm there. It's really, and I think I have my general predisposition is to be very heavily impacted by altitude, and I know people who aren't nearly as impacted, at least initially. It's bad for me. I have headaches. I got to drink water like there's no tomorrow, or my whole body just shuts down at high altitude for a few days. Yeah. So I can't imagine going in there. I mean, I hate playing gigs in Denver or in Colorado at altitude for the first 3 or 4 days I'm out there. If I'm out in the West on tour, you get a weekend, you're playing a bunch of shows, you get used to it. But those first few gigs are always a nightmare for me. And then to go out on a Sunday night, you've got the entire world of football fandom. There's only one game on Sunday nights. Everyone's watching, and you think about what's at stake for the Vikings. The Dobbs story, with a win, then Dobbs is pretty much going to be. They're going to be molding a statue for him if he gets 3 straight wins in really less than 3 weeks of being on the team. But like you said, Zepp, for Denver, this is really important for the Broncos to say, no, we really have turned this around. Yeah. We're coming in. If the Vikings were 2-6 right now, it wouldn't really be a story. It would be more about Russell Wilson. But the Vikings have made this a great tale of two teams that both need this win for different reasons, specifically, but generally it says a whole lot about the two biggest turnarounds from the first month of the season are these two teams. The Vikings stopped losing the ball. They held on to the ball, and then Dobbs turned out to be the pastronaut. And then for the Broncos, I mean, remember, they gave up 70 points to Miami this season. And that same team just went into Buffalo and beat the Bills. It's an incredible – it's a compelling – I love a game where both teams have good stories, right now. Yeah. Because they always say, the season starts – Brady always said, the season starts in mid-November. The game is such that it takes all these offenses. As I was saying earlier, the game's evolved and changed so dramatically. I think they really do. Most teams look at the first 6-7 weeks as your bucket of balls before you go play the course. It's like we're just tinkering. And what did Robert Smith say every week? They're so close. You have no idea how close you are. It's just a matter of inches, and you can turn things on a dime, and it's a matter of just getting up every day and doing the best you can that day. And you always hear coaches say that. You hear players say that, and we always roll our eyes because we're like, no, be good right now. And sure enough, here we are, and the Vikings are on a tear. It's just every year we go through the same thing. Every year. I told my son the other day, I said, man, after Thanksgiving, then we'll know who's who.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And we have to keep resetting with this Vikings team, and now we're resetting with Josh Dobbs. Hey, listen, the Falcons against not a very good team, but on the road, that was a drag.
But a top 10 defense. A top 10. For Dobbs to beat that defense is you can't sneeze at it, man.
I know, but he can't win football games against great teams like that. That was Sandlot football. He pulled a couple out of his ass. And against the Saints, they put up a real solid game team-wise, except for the second half. Defense stood in there for him, which is NFL football. I'm not criticizing the team. That's why you get past the Broncos. If they can get a win against the Broncos, or at least get it down to maybe just lose on the last drive or something like that, where they really played the Broncos stiff in Denver, and then to have the Bears at home, travel out to that dumpster fire that is the Raiders. Then you come into that last 4 weeks of the season, traveling to Cincinnati and those 2 Lions games and looking pretty tough. But yeah, so I think this Vikings-Broncos game this Sunday night is the most important game of this Vikings season now. You wouldn't have said that at the beginning of the season. Where we're at right now, the most important game of the season, even bigger than the 49ers win, I think.
Just read that there might be an issue with Dobbs' ankle.
Yeah, I saw that he had some limited practice a couple of times this week, but they expect him to go. And I don't know if an ankle's going to stop him, but is it going to slow him down, his mobility, that kind of thing, yeah.
It remains to be seen. But I love a night game. It's Sunday night football is fantastic. Yes. I got to mute the Carrie Underwood part. That's just me. But the game's going to be great. I'm excited about it, and you should be excited too because the 92 KQRS kickback jackpot is at $11,000. $11K. You can meet up with Woody and Bud Light at Lone Oak Bar and Grill during the first half of Sunday night's game. Again, 7 p.m. Sunday night kickoff. Sign up for the kickback jackpot. If the first play of the second half is a kickoff return for a touchdown by either team, by either Minnesota or Denver, you could win $11,000. If not, we're going to roll the money over to the next game and add another $1,000 to the pot. Complete contest rules at 92KQRS.com. Buddy, listen to me. Bud Light and Woody at Lone Oak Bar and Grill, 7 p.m. Sunday night. That's going to be fun.
No, he's buddy to us, I think.
He's my buddy, sure.
Yeah, why not? All right, let's welcome Sam Ekstrom onto the show. No. Moving.
I meant to say, Sam got tied up. He's a busy man, and he'll be back next week.
He's got young kids.
He does have young kids. That's always, that's all. Any day that you get up with young kids, your day can go left, right, spin around on you. Well, when you talk about great musicians to come out of Minnesota, there's a lot to talk about. But over the past 40 years, you can't have that conversation without including Peter Jesperson. You might not even know exactly who we're talking about. Maybe his name came up, but when you start talking about the Replacements, when you start talking about Twin Tone Records, when you start talking about that great music scene in the 1980s and 90s here in Minnesota that didn't include Prince, the other stuff, all the other stuff that came with it, and a wonderful story outside of that. Very excited to have Peter Jesperson in studio this morning at 9 o'clock. You'll want to stick around for that. Trust me. Hang tight.
It's the KQ Morning Show, 92 KQRS. Zep, Tony, Candace, and Steve Gorman are the KQ Morning Show, 92 KQRS.
I'm Steve Gorman. This is the KQ Morning Show. It is, what is it? It's Thursday, November 16th. And in studio with us right now, I could not be more thrilled to say Peter Jesperson has stopped by. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Peter Jesperson has a new book that has just come out. I have a copy of the book. I have not read the book. I will read it once this weekend, and then again, and then again. And
my copy is being delivered between 4 and 8 this afternoon. I'll be starting it about 1 minute after it gets here.
Yeah, Peter, you are famous for a million things. In my world, you're famous because, as far as I knew it as a kid, that's the Replacements guy. That's what you were. You were the Replacements guy as far as I knew as a kid in Kentucky. You were doing a lot before then. You are responsible in part for Twin Tone Records.
I was a co-founder.
You are a co-founder of Twin Tone Records. So before you even met the Replacements, you were already stirring things up as a part of the music scene in this very impactful music scene of the Twin Cities.
Yes, I was. I guess I was stirring it up.
Yeah. There are many, many great artists out there, and we wouldn't know of any of them without people like you discovering them, seeing them, believing in them is really the word that probably matters the most. And so as a Replacements fan since the first time I ever heard them, first of all, hey, thanks, man.
You're very welcome.
Nice job bringing that into my life. I was a college freshman in 1983, and I was already a card-carrying member of the Church of REM at that point. I got into Chronic Town right when it came out. I saw them a couple times my senior year of high school. I was obsessed. And because of the guitarist in REM, Peter Buck, never shutting his mouth up about the Replacements, I was like, I need to check out this band, The Replacements. And suddenly I had 2 tent poles. And I've said for 40 years, I play music for 2 reasons, because of REM and The Replacements.
Yeah, that's amazing. And they were my 2 favorite bands at the time. Mm-hmm. So I got to know REM a little bit right right from the get-go when they put out Radio Free Europe on a 7-inch on Hibtone Records there out of
Hibtone,
Georgia.
Johnny Hibbert.
That's right.
I knew that guy.
I didn't know him, but I sure appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a pretty special time. Your book, Euphoric Recall, which is now out, you talk about that, but other things as well. But let's talk about those early 80s. The scene here from an outsider, reading about the Minneapolis music scene, there were so many great bands. It sounded to me like Wonka Land. You know, in my mind, coming up here with an instrument, you were just walking into the chocolate factory of dreams. Did it kind of feel that way, too? Were you thinking like, man, this is a hotbed of reality right now? Great music.
We really were thinking that. And, in my opinion, the Twin Cities has always been such a great arts community of all kinds, dance, fine art, theater, the Guthrie, for God's sakes.
Sure.
And music. So when I don't think I'd really thought about starting a label until I saw Kurt Olmsted sing at the CC Club. Wow. He had a band called Thumbs Up, and that was really the reason I thought I would like to be involved in starting a record label, because I wanted to make records with Kurt and his guitar player Bob, who of course later became Slim in the latter half of the Replacements. But with Twin Tone, I don't know that we really came up with a quick concept, except that we felt like we were sort of forced into existence by the sheer number of incredible bands that needed to be recorded.
Well, at that time, you just referenced the first REM single. A guy named Johnny Hibbert put out a 45. In Atlanta, there was a guy named Danny Beard who had DB Records. Dear friend of mine. I used to work in his record store for years.
I know Danny, and I've shopped in DB Records in Atlanta many times.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
5 Points?
Little 5 Points.
Little 5 Points,
His office is at the Wax and Fax record store right there.
And I have a Wax and Fax T-shirt.
Attaboy. But I mean, it's it's the exact same thing. You love music, and you're like, well, these guys aren't getting record deals. I'll just start a label. It almost is that simple, isn't it?
It really is. And there was a proliferation of indie labels at that time, of course, and so we just jumped on board. It was kind of inevitable somebody in Minnesota would start one, but I guess we were one of the early ones.
That's pretty awesome.
Where'd you guys start recording some of those early albums? Like, it's pretty infamously known how Paul Westerberg walked in and you said, well, we've got to record these songs. These are great songs. And you got started discovering the Replacements. But where did you guys start recording at back then? Because it's not like today where you buy a computer and some software and away you go in your basement.
Right. Well, my partner one of my partners in Twin Tone, Paul Stark, had a studio that he'd built in a house that he owned in Dinkytown, 606 13th Avenue Southeast. And
I'll be driving by there after the show.
You should do that. And it's a very anonymous-looking house, and I think there might still be a studio there. But so he called it P. David Studios, which was he was Paul David Stark, and then some friends of mine from when Paul and I started getting together, and we started doing some recording. Some friends of mine from the western suburbs, from Minnetonka, Sherwood Forest, actually. They started to bring their gear in, and they called their studio out there in the basement of Mike Owen's parents' house. They called it Blackberry Way, named after the Move song. And so when they kind of integrated themselves into P. David Studios more, Paul Stark said, how would you guys like to take over the studio, bring more of your gear in? And so they just switched the name to Blackberry Way. So in answer to your question, I guess that's Zepp talking.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think... that's where we did all those early recordings, right there in that house, and it was a fun place to work. One of the interesting things, and one of the things I think that worked best for the Replacements, was they were not accustomed to being in a recording studio, and you didn't see the band from the control room at Blackberry Way, and I think that kind of made them play a little different. Because we were just in a house, so you're kind of spread out.
Yeah.
Studio, the control room's on one side, studio on the other.
Yeah, that checks out. Tony has a quick question.
Oh, Peter, back in late 79 or early 80, there was a gem of a double album with the Commandos and the Suburbs, the Hipsters, Curtis Say, all these influential artists. The Big Hits of Mid-America Volume 3, and I read somewhere that there's going to be a reissue or a remaster of that.
Yep, I just got the reissue yesterday. It finally came in stock.
Nice.
We did it with a local label here called Back Groove Records, some great people who... Rob Sheely, who has a record store out in Hopkins called Mill City Sound, and Rick Mank, the great drummer from Velvet Crush and many other things.
Oh my God, I haven't seen him in forever. He's a great drummer.
Rick used to work at my favorite record store in Los Angeles, Freak Beat, and then he moved to Minneapolis a couple years ago. And
oh, no kidding.
So Rick and Rob are kind of putting that stuff together. They've done a material issue reissue, and they've done what was the other one? A Velvet Crush reissue.
Right.
And they're actually working on maybe getting some Tommy Keene stuff now.
Oh my God! I'm having a goosebump party over here. All these names.
But in the middle of it, they called Paul Stark and I and said, "We would like to reissue Big Hits of Mid-America. Would you license it to us?" And we said, "Certainly." So we did.
Oh,
it's funny. This is such a small world. You know, I said, so there's a record store in Atlanta called Wax and Facts, and I worked there in the late 80s. That's where I met Rick Menck, because if you're Rick Menck in the 80s, you go to Wax and Facts. You know, if you're from Atlanta back then, if you're in Athens, you go to Wuck Street. If you're in Minneapolis, whatever, it's just the circuit.
Yep.
And you run across all these people, and it's amazing that all these years later, we're all still crossing paths.
Yeah.
At some point, okay, so here's the deal. You grew up here. You're a music fan. You're obsessive probably with records as a kid, right?
Yep.
And then you start Twin Tone, having no idea what you're getting yourself into. And then you're making records with bands you believe in. Do you look back at those days by the mid 80s when it suddenly dawned on you? Did you have certain moments where you were like, hey, this is working? Like, did you get a letter from someone in Sweden out of the blue? Like, I love the Replacements. And there has to be moments where you look back and go, yeah, we had no idea, but then it became obvious this is working.
I think there were times where I actually acknowledged that, we were having a heyday. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like I looked back later and said, hey, that was really great. I kind of knew it was happening at the time. I could feel it.
That's great.
But, as far as getting into the record store and starting the label, that was actually came after my original dream was to work in radio. I went to radio school at Brown Institute, studied broadcasting and radio electronics, and I did it specifically to get a job at KQRS.
And here you are.
I brought a demo tape in, and I gave it to somebody, and I never even got an interview. It was just a big fat no.
Well, Peter, I hold in my hands a contract. We would like you to sign and join the morning show. You should have done what I did. You should have bought a drum kit and then just walked in the side door many years later.
Well, you eventually got here, Peter. We traveled that same path. I went to Brown when it was down on Lake Street. And the first day of class, they asked, what do you want to accomplish? I said, I just want to be a DJ on KQRS. Finally made it over here. What took you? This is a book many of us have been waiting for since I saw my first Replacement show in '85. What took you so long to write the book? Why now? And how did you remember you've done so much and been through so much outside of Minneapolis when you went out west? Why now? That's a big question.
Well, basically, I got an offer to write a book deal. I got a guy in 2018. I got an email that said, "Would you like to write a memoir for us regarding your work in music over the years?" And I guess I had thought about the idea of doing a book at some point, but I also felt, who am I kidding? I can't really write a book. I read a lot of record label content. I read a lot of band bios, record reviews. I love to write. I think I get a little buzz from writing, like I get a buzz from listening to music. But anyway, it just took a hard offer from an actual publisher to kick me into gear. And I'd been at a label out in Los Angeles for 17 years called New West Records and had a great time there. But I left in 2016, went freelance, which I love. And 2 years after I started going freelance, I get the offer to write the book, and that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years.
Wow.
Man, that's it takes a while.
And I thought it's a win-win situation because I don't know how many people are going to want to read it, but if it's nothing more than a elaborate journal for my son, that's okay.
Sure. The book is called Euphoric Recall, which is just a great turn of phrase. Is that you? Did you come up with that, or is that something else?
Well, it actually has to do with a chapter about my substance abuse.
Okay.
And that's a term that comes out of...
I totally get it now.
Yeah, treatment jargon, where they tell you not to have fond memories of your drug and alcohol experiences because it'll send you right back into it.
I don't think that's necessarily true.
I don't either, and I disagreed, and I thought it was a great phrase.
I think Euphoric Recall is important.
I agree. I think you've got to acknowledge the fact that, there were some good times, but you got into some bad times and you had to knock it off.
Yeah, I wrote a book as well about my time in a band for 30 years, and people that read it, I had several fans came up and they were like, well, it just is so sad. I don't even want to listen to the records now. And I was like, oh, no, God, no. If you take away the records, all that's left is this. You got to have that. I mean, hey, it all made sense at the time. Yep. It just doesn't make sense now. Yep. So how long clean and sober are you?
32 and a half years.
That's pretty good, my man.
Yeah.
Well done. That's a hell of an accomplishment.
It wasn't real. I mean, it wasn't hard. I got myself good and sick, and I said I never want to do this again.
Good.
And I haven't.
Attaboy.
That's fantastic.
What do you think of the new Let It Bleed Replacements Tim mix that came out? How did you receive that?
I call it a correction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the way the record should have sounded.
Yeah.
And like you, Steve, I like the original one. I mean, I kind of probably groused about the mix. We all groused about the mix, including the band members when it was done. We spent 6 weeks making that record, and it was. Just at the end, we kind of threw up our hands and said, this isn't exactly what we were looking for, but it's kind of too late to turn back now without just, chucking the whole thing and, spending another couple $100,000 trying to fix it.
Yeah. We talked a lot about Tim when that came out here a couple months ago, whenever that was. You were, I'm assuming, there for most of those recordings.
Well, I wasn't really around for the Tim album so much, and that was a point where the band wanted to work specifically with Tommy Erdely from the Ramones and Steve Felstead, our standard engineer, who had been doing most of the records over at Blackberry Way. And so I was not present for a lot of it, but I was present for the end and a couple of crucial moments, like I was actually there the night when Paul recorded Here Comes a Regular.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you about.
And that was I mean, I don't really know how to describe it without sounding crazy, but it was just a huge moment in my experience. And I don't think he hadn't had it on the board as a song to record. And I'd been talking to the A&R man from Sire Records in New York, Michael Hill. Great guy, great friend. And he had said to me, has Paul recorded his solo song yet? And I was really in tune with what Paul had on deck for records most of the time.
Right.
And I said, I don't think he has a solo song for this record. We were touring a lot at the time, so he wasn't writing maybe as much because he didn't really write on the road. And so I said, I don't think he has one. And Michael said, I don't know. I think he told me he has one. So I approached Paul and I said, hey, you've been holding out on me. What about this? I hear you got an acoustic song.
Yeah.
And he got a very spooked look on his face. It was very much like he didn't want to go there. And then suddenly he just looked like he got a look of determination. He said, okay, let's go. And he told Steve to cue up a tape. And we went in the room and I put a chair out for him. And Steve put up a couple mics, turned the lights down to almost black, almost dark. And I went in the studio with Tommy and Steve and hit record, and that song came out. And there's 3 grown men standing there probably holding back the tears. It was an amazing experience.
I mean, as a college kid, the first time I ever heard it, I just sat there and stared at the speaker going, okay, that's my life before and after this song. There's a defining moment. I can't imagine being in the room.
Exactly. It's one of those things I had many, many times where I'd hear a song like that and I'd go, I've grossly underestimated Paul Westerberg. He's even better than I thought he was.
Yeah. Wow.
We are in the studio right now with Peter Jesperson. The book Euphoric Recall is available wherever you want to buy books. I am having an entire morning of Euphoric Recall just sitting across the table from you, my man. I don't even know where to start half the time. We just heard the Replacements' I'll Be You. And, of course, I said, that's on the single soundtrack. And you're like, no, it wasn't. That was Dyslexic Heart was the one from the single soundtrack. Peter Jesperson signed the Replacements, found the Replacements, managed the Replacements, and is somehow still walking around upright.
Babysat the Replacements.
Babysat the Replacements. That in itself is an accomplishment, sir.
Possibly babysit those guys. I mean, they were just such a, it was this truth through inebriation. Because I don't even remember my first match show. People are like, oh, you were there at 7th Street. I'm like, yeah, I was there. I don't remember jack squat about it. I mean, I remember peeing on the back wall of 7th Street entry because you couldn't get out, and I wasn't the only one pissing on the wall.
Right.
I remember every time Peter Jesperson would come in the room, they'd go, that's Peter Jesperson over there. And about a third of the time it was. Most of the time it wasn't. We were pointing at some other guy. Just to get attention. Do you look back on those Replacement years, and there's so much more to your book than the Replacements, but that changed the trajectory of my life. For a lot of people, it was Elvis, the Beatles. For me, when some guy gave me a cassette of Let It Be and goes, here, you might like this shit, Zep. And I popped it in the boombox, everything changed for me. It's why I moved to Minnesota. Do you look back on your time with the Replacements? Do you think of it as mostly successful or a bunch of regrets? What do you think?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say successful because I didn't think they had the success that they should have had in my mind, in our minds. But I look back on it very fondly. I mean, I had in my work, being an A&R person, essentially. I mean, I've done a bunch of stuff, but that's kind of my main gig is I help people make records. That's probably, the highlight of my work. And certainly the thing that, now going around talking to people, doing promotion for this book, it's like I've never been thanked so much in my life. It's a great and gratifying feeling because, at the beginning, we were kind of laughed at. People thought we were crazy for picking up this band with a 13-year-old bass player,
Tommy Stinson, who I just mentioned, I've met him a few times over the years, and just strikes me as the most affable, well-adjusted, mild-mannered fella. And he was in this band at 13 in a van touring around. And I'm just going to go ahead and say credit you for keeping him around. I mean, you said babysitter. You weren't kidding.
Well, I actually became his legal guardian to get him into gigs at a certain point, and so it was, he was just a wonderful person to hang around with. He was the rest of us were drinking, and he wasn't for a number of years, and then he joined the club, and things got out of hand, and we've all had our ups and downs, Tommy included, but he's in a great space right now. I think he just made the best record of his life with his new band, Cowboys in the Campfire.
Great
album called Wronger came out last June. I mean, I just think it's beautiful stuff, and he just keeps getting better. So
this is we laugh because it's 40 years of hindsight, and so it's okay to laugh at stuff. But at the time, these are emotionally charged, reasonable decisions. You're doing the best to do what's best for your artist, but at the same time, everyone's so emotionally invested in different ways, just the personalities within Replacements, those four guys. And then you have your own investment emotionally and intellectually, and then you're somehow supposed to be the guy at the end of the night with the car keys in your hand. Did it, I mean, you jump in, you signed up for it, but there had to be days when you were just thinking like, I just want to go work at Arby's, man.
Well, it wasn't really wanting to go to work at Arby's, but I mean, I do remember at a point in 1983, I did some temporary road managing for REM, and I had driven out from Minneapolis to, working our way across the country, doing some dates with REM and some with on our own. We got to Boston, played the Paradise. I took my bag out of the Replacements van and threw it in the REM van and rode with them for a month or so.
Wow!
And so that was that comparison was really something, to go from the chaos of riding in the Replacements van to the. I realized how civilized touring could be. To drive with the REM guys who all had driver's licenses, and we could split driving, and they were helpful in with directions and things like that, as opposed to the Replacements, who I'd be going from one state to the next, and I'd turn the page in the atlas, and they would have torn that page out and thrown it out the window. So it was that sort of thing.
It's pretty funny when people say things like, "What's the hardest part about being in a band?" The answer is being in a band. It's all depending on the people you're with. I mean, what you just said is really true. Like, you look at, is this band going to make it? And you have to ask yourself, well, can they all drive? I mean, it's things like that. It's like, well, you just assume, yeah, they're probably talented. They might even have great songs, but can they all drive? Can they, how on a scale of 1 to 10 crazy, what are we dealing with here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, REM was famously the smart guys, and they were the Beatles to the Replacement Stones or whatever. I mean, at the time, in real time, as a kid, as a fan, obsessively reading every article I could about both bands. And they were always pitted as friendly rivals. There was rivalry, but they were like I said, Peter Buck turned me on to the Replacements, but then you would hear little stories, and somebody would say, I was in DeKalb, Illinois, and Peter Buck said Paul's a jerk. And then, you're like, did he really? What? Yeah. I mean, I was so obsessed with that. To me, it was like hearing McCartney and Jagger feuding. It really was.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I think in those days, too, the thing that I find remarkable about REM is that they just rarely made a mistake. They did everything right from the get-go, giving all four guys in the band writing credit. I mean, what a great thing to do for the longevity of the band.
You can learn a lot if you pay attention to where everyone else went wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, and you were friends with, I think Pete Buck was your intro to that world. You
really
and he first connected. And he is nobody's fool. That's a bright guy.
Yeah, he's a very smart guy. He's you should see his house. He's got more books than any human I've ever met.
Really?
And that's what he does on the road. He buys records too, but he buys books like a madman, and I think that's really cool because I'm a reader too.
Right, as am I. I don't think you'd ever say I have more books than anyone you ever met, though. That immediately I'm like, I like him even more now.
Yeah,
bastard.
Yeah, he was just, we were birds of a feather. We liked to stay up all night and listen to records, and we became friends, and we still are.
Yeah, that's great.
Peter Jesperson, our guest this morning, talking about Euphoric Recall, your book. We can't wait to dig in, the hardcover out there. Mary Haubrick emailed in. I hope this isn't a setup. I get punked all the time, and I fall for these things. But she asked, Peter, do you remember a Minneapolis band called Steve, Bob, and Rich?
I do not.
Oh, okay. So thank you, Mary. I owe you one. I'm going to be emailing
there
you
it
back
is.
in just a moment for embarrassing me in front of Peter.
So Twin Tone, you were with Twin Tone till when?
Well, Twin Tone was my company with two other partners, and so we started in 1977, and we folded it up in 1998.
And then you went to New West when? Right after that?
1999.
Right. And so New West has had a heck of a run.
They have. We had a great time. I was the first employee. Cameron Strang, who founded the label, invited me in when he heard that I was between jobs. And we had shut Twin Tone down as a signing new records kind of label and only keeping our back catalog in print. And I was just kind of looking around for things to do. And I got a call from this guy and said, would you like to talk about joining me at a new label I've started? And I said, sure. He only had 10 records out at that time. And so I came on board, and I worked with them for the next actually, Cameron was only there till 2010. I stayed with New West through 2017 under a different owner.
Right.
2016, rather. And, that was a great ride. It was a different ball game because Twin Tone was there was a lot of ups and downs financially. And New West was very well funded and a little more business-like than Twin Tone had been. I loved working with both labels, but yeah, New West was just I got to work with, Chris Christopherson and, Dwight Yoakam, for God's sakes. I'm all about singers. Singers are kind of my thing, and Dwight Yoakam's one of the best, I think.
No argument here. Peter, when you look back at the, let's look at the Twin Tone year, 77, you said through the 80s, that time, like I always said, a lot of times, the 90s was sort of like, that was the realization of what all these artists from the 80s were doing. Like when Nirvana went through the roof, I was like, oh, it took that long for somebody who listened to The Damned to have a hit record. It's like one of the, you start connecting the dots.
Yep.
And you go right back. And then when my band took off, we were an 80s band that were more 70s leaning sound wise, but we were all of the same era. We were all Replacements fan, REM fans, Long Riders, Green on Red. You can just go down this list of all these. We all had the same records. Jason and the Scorchers, we were talking about. I look back on that time, and I'm curious if you do, because I was still a kid, so I wasn't in it. But everybody looks back with the sepia-toned, this was a magical period. But I really think it was for music because of people like you and the mindset of you weren't some mob boss at a record company. You weren't some wise guy who had a casino who's like, I can promote this concert. I mean, the 80s, the late 70s and the 80s, real music fans finally said, well, we should just do this ourselves. Is that oversimplified? Because it certainly still feels like that's the case to me.
No, I think that is the case, and I think that's what we were doing at a record store. When I got into record stores, I had shopped at all the stores that had been around prior to North Country Music, which became Or Folk Joke Opus. And they were all run by businessmen and older people.
Yeah.
And so we kind of took over, and record stores started being run by, music fans.
Right.
And so, one of our things was like, I remember the major label reps generally avoided us because they thought we were a bunch of weirdos. But they'd come in with display materials for like a Bon Jovi record or something.
Right.
And I'd just say, I'm sorry, I can't put that in my window.
Yeah.
And they'd be disgusted, and they'd be furious, and they'd scream at me. They'd say, you'll never get another Columbia Records promo again. And I'd say, well, that's okay. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
We put up records in our windows that we endorse and none others.
It really was. And I think part of the idea that it's a special time is that story couldn't be repeated in any town in America. There was always at least one group of people. When I got to college in Bowling Green, Kentucky, there were no independent record stores. There was a record bar in the mall, but the guy that ran it was the right guy. You know what I mean? He had all the right records, and he ordered the stuff that, we would get the promo copies ahead of time. And there are since now, 40 years later, there's indie record stores there, and it's cool. But there were those that what my kids who are in college right now would say, how did you find each other back then? But it was like you guys were all sending up smoke signals, and learning it as you went. Like how bands like the Replacements and REM, there wasn't really a template for how to tour as a band in a van making your own music in 1980, 81, 82.
Sure. Well, like here in Minneapolis, the Suicide Commandos broke ground. I mean, they were the ones that, cut a path where there hadn't been one before. They went to, play CBGBs in 1975, for God's sakes.
Wow.
And I think that's just, you cannot overstate how important the Commandos were. I mean, without them, I might not be doing what I'm doing. There might not have been a Husker Du or a Replacements,
Yeah, right. Well, you talk about Husker Du, the Replacements, the Burbs, Curtis A., some of these artists that didn't find the huge commercial success when it rolled into the 90s. Now, Soul Asylum did. Harder, faster rules, as we know. Soul Asylum finally did. What was the difference between Soul Asylum breaking out and some of those other great Minneapolis bands that just didn't have that huge commercial success?
Boy, that's a tough question to answer, because I think there were other bands that preceded Soul Asylum that should have gotten that same treatment, and it just didn't. And who knows why that was. I mean, certainly for the Replacements, they did not cooperate. They did not, they bit the hand that fed. And so, to me, that's not such an astonishing thing that they didn't happen larger, even though they had all those great songs. But, the Suburbs, that's one that I still scratch my head about. Why did, when they went to Polygram and they put out Love is the Law, why was that song not a global smash?
Yeah.
Who knows? And Soul Asylum, I remember actually we were recording, a guy named Brian Paulson worked at Rykodisc, and we used to, do recording after hours in the Rykodisc building, and we made records there. We made the first Slim Dunlap record there. We made a part of a record by the Leatherwoods there, several other things that I got to work on. And we were there setting up one night for some session or another, probably a Slim session, and Brian said, hey, I got a couple new Soul Asylum songs, and this is like 1992 maybe. And I said, I thought they broke up. What do you mean you got some new Soul Asylum songs? And he played me a couple of rough demos, and there was this one called Runaway Train. Yeah. And I was like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
And, that was a record that just landed at the right time. And they're still gigging on the strength of that song. I mean, they had lots of great songs, but that's the one that put them over the top, initially anyway.
Peter Jesperson's book, Euphoric Recall. You were in the room when it happened, as they love to say these days. For an awful lot of things, I'm really glad happened. So first of all, what you were just doing, because you were enjoying it, I want to thank you for that, because it's all meant a lot to my life.
Thank you very much.
And I'm glad you took the time to write this book. I will report back to you on Monday as I have finished it. I assure you that. And you are welcome in this room anytime, brother.
That's fantastic, Steve. It was great to meet you, Zepp, and everybody else.
Real thrill to have you. Thank you, sir.
I'm honored.
Yeah.
Get us out of here, Zepp.
Work literally changed my life. Real quick, one more quick question. Peter, any local book signing gigs coming up? People can come out and meet you, get the book.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Yeah, I'll be at Roadrunner Records on 45th and Nicollet on Saturday from noon to 2 or 3, however long people want to hang out.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
The KQ Morning Show, 92 KQRS.